Recording is hitting everything. Well, some weeks ago, January 29th to be precise, the Sesame Street puppet Elmo caused a stir on social media. On computers across the continent, perhaps beyond, on the platform called X, which most of us know as Twitter, Elmo wrote, forgive the voice here, "Elmo is just checking in. How is everybody doing?" Well, Elmo got 20,000 responses, mostly along the lines of, "Not good, Elmo, not good." People opened up about their brokenness and their shattered lives, about their frustration and their discouragement, about their pain and their concerns. Indeed, it became so viral that news and entertainment programs on television started reporting about it. And Sesame Street began posting mental health resources and links on their website. And Elmo came back and said, "Wow, Elmo is glad that he asked. Elmo learned that it is important to ask a friend how they are doing. Elmo will check in again soon, friends. Elmo loves you. Hashtag emotional well-being." So it would seem that people in the world are feeling the chaos. And how can they not? Given the wars and the rumors of wars and the political divisions that seem ever widening, and the slow pace of reconciliation and recovery, the legacy of COVID is still very present. The recent news out of Carmen has been devastating, as is the news of every child who is killed, whether in Gaza or at a mass shooting at a Super Bowl parade. The news is discouraging. Everywhere you turn, there seems to be another public figure who's disappointing us with their behavior, not to mention the physical and emotional health issues that many of us are dealing with. Lots of you will know that 2023 was not my best year. As I was in the hospital receiving a stem cell transplant to treat my non-curable cancer, my sister was suddenly diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and subsequently died. I had this cataract surgery, which is supposed to be very simple, but you know, with my things, it was complicated. And then I had an emergency bowel surgery for something that occasionally happens to 1% of people for no reason at all. So I feel like I can relate to all those people who want to tell Elmo that things weren't that great. Perhaps you too can relate in your own way. I don't know what sort of struggles or pain that you are carrying, what conflicts are causing strife in your family or your workplace. But even if you feel like you are personally in a pretty good place, given the state of the world, I'm confident that you are connected to someone who is feeling the chaos. And as we come into this Lenten season, exploring how to pick up the pieces, given the mess of the world, we arrive at one of the most difficult, challenging, and even dangerous of Jesus' teachings. That Jesus is called to suffer and die, and that his disciples are also called to deny themselves, take up their crosses, and follow. I don't know how hopeful that feels to you. I'm not getting the hope right away. So let's take a closer look. The reading begins with Jesus talking about the challenges he is facing. He starts to talk about his impending struggles. And Peter says, "Wait, no, stop talking like that. Don't be so negative. Surely it won't get to that. You're fine. We're fine." Do you recognize that instinct? How many times when you are asked do you say, "Fine," when really you are not? How many times have you attempted to cheer someone else up and invite them to look on the bright side when they've been talking about their pain. In Peter's case, I think we might call that a case of denial, or avoidance, or both. And often we too think that's the best way to deal with the world around us. It's so overwhelming, so just don't think about it. Don't talk about it. Pretend that everything is fine. But it turns out that pretending and hope are not the same thing. Pretending and resilience are not the same thing. Pretending is just that, pretending. It's not real. In fact, Jesus loses his patience with it. That's that famous saying, "Get behind me, Satan." And then he starts saying things that are hard for the disciples to understand and equally hard for us to understand. You're setting your mind on not on divine things, but human things. Well, we're human after all. How can we not think about human things? But we can let go, for example, of all that too human need to pretend. Instead, be the real people God created and loves. And if we stop pretending and own our real stories, the hope is that we can help shape the ending. Last week, some of us heard Elijah note that the story does not end in chaos. And perhaps we may find hope in the fact that our sorrow is not the end of our story. Is that what enables us to find hope? Is that what might help us continue on when everything around us seems to be falling apart? Jesus' next words don't seem to help that much. They're confusing. Their contradictions kind of add to the chaos, really. If any wish to come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who will lose their life for my sake, for the sake of the gospel, will find it. What? What kind of upside down backwards riddles is he spouting now? But what if they're not contradictions at all? They only appear to us that way. Jesus invites his followers, which is us too, after all, to reimagine how we think about and understand our world. Rethink how we imagine success and failure and value. What we hold on to and what we will let go. Yes, it's the kind of thing that can start to hurt your brain when you just pay attention to the words and the contradictions. But Jesus is always saying things that challenge us to shift how we define worth and value, isn't he? When people imagine the coming of a Messiah to save them, they imagine someone who would fight the power, who might come with an army to take over the Roman rulers, or who might come like Moses to free them from their captivity. But that's not the salvation that Jesus brings, is it? Time after time after time, Jesus talks about a different way. A way of life that values what the world thinks is small and insignificant, that asks those with resources to share the burden of those who are carrying the heavy loads. And instead of grasping at the world for power or money or fame, Jesus talks about love of God and neighbor. That value is found in giving, not grasping. Like that song says, right? Love is something, if you give it away, you end up having more. So he says, don't be afraid of the chaos. Instead, pick up your cross and take the next step. We'll make that road by walking. And by this, I don't think for a minute that he's suggesting we need to seek out struggle or revel in our suffering. God takes no joy in our pain. After all, the greatest commandment is to love God and love our neighbors as ourselves, which means loving ourselves too, right? As a commentary I read this week notes, rather, the assumptions here are A, that you already have suffering in your life, including in the future, and B, that following Jesus, like any meaningful mission, will entail some suffering. And so the invitation then is not to seek out, but rather take up that suffering, to seize the role of active protagonist in the drama, not the role of passive victim, and then to follow Jesus along a way that leads to health and liberation and restoration and new life. We can help shape our story. We can give up pretending for the sake of real hope. Now, key to this hope, I suppose, is the understanding that we are loved through it all. And I wonder whether that's what Jesus is getting at when he challenged Peter to set his mind on divine things. I wonder if it's something about where we expect to see God, where we look for God, and how we know that God loves us. What I have noticed over the past year is that when I have stopped pretending and been open about my troubles, I have made space for others to join me in my struggle, to help me and care for me and even carry me. Not an easy thing for an independent sort like me. But letting go has made space for me to experience gratitude in new ways, to see God's work in the humans around me. Being open to those divine things has in fact helped me see an incarnational God alive in human things. Sometimes I notice myself expecting that God's job should be to make my life easier. And Jesus' teaching is that, oh, I have that wrong. Entirely and completely wrong. But, in fact, his teaching says that we are in this together, in this chaos together. And that if we share it together, we will discover that God is right there too, helping us take whatever it is that is our next step, even if it's in the form of a furry Muppet puppet, reminding us that our story matters and that we are loved. Indeed, there is hope. Thanks be to God.